If you fix that engine, I'll marry you." The words rang out like a gunshot through the metal rafters of the Precision Automotive warehouse. Everyone turned. The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was cruel, sharp, and coated in disbelief. Marcus Reed stood there, his hands still smeared with oil, one knee planted beside a broken dam V. "Come on, Marcus," she sneered. "Make us all believe in miracles. After all, what's a GED and some grease stains compared to a degree from MIT?" He didn't say a word, didn't even flinch, but the whole shop knew what this was. Not just a dare, but a public execution of pride. The black mechanic who dared question the system was now their entertainment. She was going to make an example out of him. And for a moment, just a moment, it seemed like she might succeed. Until Marcus reached for his wrench. Marcus Reed was 38 years old, a single father, and had spent more time under hoods than most engineers spent behind desks. Born and raised in southwest Detroit, he knew what it meant to hustle. After his wife passed away from cancer 5 years ago, he worked double shifts just to keep the lights on for his daughter Imani. They lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a barber shop. The rent kept climbing, and so did the bills. Every morning, Marcus packed Imani's lunch, walked her to her school in a district no one cared about, and then headed to the Precision Automotive plant where he wasn't just fixing engines, he was the reason half the company's biggest contracts stayed afloat when things broke down. But they never saw that. To them, he was just the mechanic. No matter how many times he caught errors the engineers missed, no matter how many late-night repairs he pulled off to save million-dollar deadlines, his name never made it on the reports. Heather Connors made sure of that. She came from Grosse Pointe, an elite suburb outside Detroit. Her daddy owned shares in the company. Fresh out of Stanford with a mechanical engineering degree, she strutted in on her first day calling shots like she'd built the place herself. From the moment she arrived, she had her eyes on Marcus, but not in admiration. It was the kind of look people give when they think you've wandered into a room you don't belong in. And she didn't just look. She made it clear, we need to raise the bar here. No more legacy workers. We need a new culture. Legacy workers. That's what she called the people who had been there before her. The ones who'd kept the company alive during the recession. The ones like Marcus. The worst part, HR backed her. They called it innovation. Marcus called it what it really was, cleansing. Still, he kept his head down, not because he was weak, but because every paycheck meant food on the table, books for Imani, and one more day of dignity. Until she went too far. It all started during the Monday morning meeting, one of those stiff, awkward gatherings where the engineers ran through numbers while the floor workers pretended to matter. Heather was standing near the whiteboard, arms folded, flanked by her usual crowd. Brad Turner, her snickering assistant from Dartmouth, Cheryl Brooks from HR, and a few young interns who laughed at every joke she made. Marcus was off to the side, leaning against a rolling tool cart, quietly reviewing the schematics for a misfiring engine from one of their key clients, Horizon Transit. The problem had stumped the engineering team for a week, costing the company thousands per day in downtime. That's when Heather made her move. With a grin as sharp as a scalpel, she turned toward him and said, "Hey Marcus, since you're always so sure you know better than the rest of us, why don't you go ahead and fix that V8 block on Bay 7? Right now. No help, no manuals. Just you." The room went silent. Then she added, her voice dripping with venom, "And if you do, I'll marry you." Brad burst out laughing. "Come on, Heather," he said, "let the man dream." But she wasn't joking. She held up her phone and hit record. "Want this on the company feed," she said, "so everyone can see what happens when someone steps outside their lane." Marcus froze, not because he was afraid, but because the setup was so blatant. She wasn't just challenging his skills. She was mocking his place, his worth, his entire existence. He looked around. Not a single person spoke up. Not even Frank Harris, the senior mechanic who'd mentored him years ago. Their eyes all dropped to the floor. Heather leaned in closer. "You want to be the big man, Marcus? Go ahead. Show us what your little garage diploma taught you." He didn't respond. He just walked past her toward Bay 7. And as he passed by Brad, he heard the whisper, "Bet he'll blow a gasket before the engine does." They all laughed. But Marcus wasn't thinking about them. He was thinking about Imani, and how this would be the last time anyone ever laughed at her father. Marcus didn't speak. He didn't raise his voice, didn't plead for fairness, didn't demand respect. He simply put on his gloves, tightened his bandana, and walked to Bay 7. The V8 block sat like a dead beast under the hanging lights. Wires loose, timing off diagnostic tools abandoned. It had defeated 3 engineers already. But Marcus didn't look intimidated. As Heather zoomed in with her camera, narrating snide remarks for her company video, Marcus calmly pulled his own phone from his pocket, opened a voice memo app, and hit record. He placed it on the workbench. "If they want a show," he whispered under his breath, "they'll get one." What Heather didn't realize was that Marcus had already reviewed this engine's failure diagrams in his off-loungers. He'd been running simulations at home using open-source software on an old laptop while Imani slept. In just 23 minutes, Marcus diagnosed the problem: a faulty EGR valve, misrouted vacuum lines, and a software patch missing from the ECU. By minute 35, the engine turned over. Clean, smooth, purring, and loud enough to silence the room. Heather's smirk faltered, but she wasn't done. "Lucky guess," she muttered. "You probably tinkered with it before." But Marcus walked over to her, calmly, respectfully, and said, "Would you like to check the security footage? I haven't touched that engine in 2 weeks." She didn't respond. "Drives me. I also suggest you save your video," he added, glancing at her phone, "because I'm saving mine, including the part where you offered marriage as a reward for labor. That's harassment, and it's on the record." Brad tried to jump in. "Come on, man, it was a joke." "I don't joke about dignity," Marcus said, looking him dead in the eye. Then he turned to Cheryl from HR, who had been quietly observing from the corner, and said, "Per company policy, I'm formally requesting a review meeting, with union representation. I'm documenting everything." It was the first time in 6 years that someone from the floor had challenged the system out loud. And in that moment, the smirks disappeared. 3 days passed. The engine incident hadn't died down like Heather expected. Instead, the video had quietly started circulating, not the one she posted with her smug narration, but a cleaner version. One without mockery. One with facts. It was Marcus' version. And it was spreading, first among warehouse workers, then through union reps, and eventually into a quiet email chain that reached the inboxes of people far above Heather's pay grade. On Thursday morning, Marcus was called into a private meeting on the 12th floor, a place few floor employees had ever been. Inside sat Druck Lorraine Bennett, an external consultant and former federal workplace ethics investigator, now advising the Precision Automotive Board. She greeted Marcus with a warm smile. "Mr. Reed, we've been reviewing some disturbing patterns. But first, can I ask why someone with your resume isn't in management?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What resume?" She handed him a printed file. His own. Degrees he had earned more than a decade ago. Top of his class at Wayne State University. Double major in mechanical engineering and applied physics. Internship at Tesla. Research assistant on clean combustion systems. There was even a letter of recommendation from a Department of Energy project lead. "I don't advertise any of that," Marcus said quietly. "They stopped seeing me for who I was. Started calling me uppity for asking questions." He explained how he dropped off the radar to care for his wife during her illness. How, after her passing, he never had the chance or the energy to fight his way back into rooms where doors had quietly shut on people who looked like him. Dr. Bennett nodded. "You didn't just fix an engine, you exposed a culture. And you have more people behind you than you think." Marcus looked out the window. Detroit was humming below, the skyline glinting through factory smoke. Heather had mocked a mechanic. But what she didn't know, she had humiliated someone who once co-authored the diagnostics manual she used every day. By the following week, Precision Automotive was under quiet internal review. Emails had been pulled, meeting transcripts examined, exit interviews reanalyzed, and something alarming started to emerge. 19 out of the last 25 terminated employees were people of color. Of those 19, 16 had performance reviews that showed no disciplinary action. And in 13 of those cases, the final recommendation to separate came from the same person, Heather Connors. But she wasn't acting alone. Brad Turner, her assistant, had sent at least a dozen internal emails tagging certain workers as not culture fit. Cheryl Brooks from HR had consistently closed internal complaints without escalation, labeling them unsubstantiated. One employee had even filed a grievance 2 years ago describing Heather's behavior as openly hostile toward legacy staff, but it never reached the board. Dr. Bennett compiled everything. And then, during the quarterly board meeting, she presented the full report. Walter Grant, the CEO, looked pale as the findings unfolded. He had inherited the company from his father, never realizing that the culture had slowly turned toxic under his leadership. Marcus didn't attend that meeting. But he didn't have to. His story had already made it across the company. Warehouse workers began comparing notes. Former employees came forward. Even clients began to take notice, some quietly inquiring if their service teams were being restructured after that video. Local radio picked up the buzz. Tina Wallace, host of Detroit Speaks, interviewed a former employee who broke down crying on air, saying, "They didn't fire us because we couldn't do the job. They fired us because we reminded them of where this company came from." And behind it all was Marcus. Not yelling, not seeking revenge, but calmly helping others put the pieces together. He wasn't the only one who had been pushed out of the room. He was just the first one who stayed long enough to hold the door open from the inside. The fallout came faster than anyone expected. By Monday morning, 3 major clients had reached out to Precision Automotive, requesting clarity on the company's internal diversity practices. One contract, worth nearly $12 million, 0 cents annually, was placed on hold pending ethical reassessment. That same day, Fix It Like Marcus began trending on Detroit social media, sparked by a short clip of Marcus quietly repairing the engine, overlaid with the caption, "He fixed more than the motor. He fixed the mirror we were too scared to look into." The board called an emergency meeting. Heather Connors was suspended without pay pending investigation. But the damage was already done. Someone had leaked the full HR report. Screenshots of emails, audio of Brad's snide remarks, even video snippets from Heather's phone, where she'd mocked Marcus to a group of interns, had surfaced online. Her followers plummeted. Her LinkedIn was locked. Every online profile flooded with comments like, "So this is what corporate racism looks like. Credentials without character is just privilege in a suit." The engine wasn't the only thing broken at Precision. Within 48 hours, both Brad Turner and Cheryl Brooks quietly resigned. No farewell emails, no LinkedIn updates. And Heather? She tried to explain it away, released a statement full of hollow apologies and learning moments, claimed she came from a competitive culture, and was deeply sorry if anyone felt disrespected. But it was too late. Tina Wallace, the radio host, read her apology on air and followed it with a single sentence. "You didn't just lose your job, Heather. You lost your mask, and people don't forget what's behind it." Meanwhile, the company's shareholders demanded an independent audit and immediate overhaul of HR practices. Walter Grant, the CEO, addressed the public in a somber press conference, acknowledging that a complete cultural reset was needed. But the true victory wasn't in firings or hashtags. It was in the silence that followed. For the first time in years, Marcus walked into work without eyes rolling, whispers trailing, or doors closing behind him. And when someone needed help in the shop, they didn't ask Heather. They asked him. Marcus never asked for applause. After everything, he returned to work just as he always had. Quiet, focused, dependable. But now, when he spoke, people listened. When he walked into a room, no one looked past him anymore. They looked to him. But Marcus didn't stop at his own redemption. Instead of taking the promotion offered by the board, a shiny new title with a corner office, he respectfully declined. "I'm not here for a title," he told them. "I'm here to make sure no one else gets erased." A month later, he launched the Reed Foundation for Technical Equity, a nonprofit dedicated to training and mentoring young mechanics of color from underserved communities. Using donated space from a retired auto parts warehouse, Marcus built something that no degree ever gave him. Legacy. His first student cohort included 10 high school dropouts, 4 single moms, and 1 formerly incarcerated veteran. People society often wrote off. People who reminded Marcus of himself and his late wife, who had once told him, "The world doesn't need more stars, it needs more light." He gave free classes on diagnostics, soft skills, and labor law. Every student left not just with tools, but with dignity. Dr. Lorraine Bennett joined as a board advisor, helping secure state-level grants. And when the mayor of Detroit came by for a visit, he didn't just cut a ribbon. He offered Marcus a permanent seat on the city's Workforce Equity Task Force. But Marcus still showed up at Precision Automotive twice a week. Not because he had to, but because he refused to abandon the floor he once knelt on. Every time he lifted a hood, he taught someone watching that brilliance didn't need a badge, that power didn't have to be loud, and that healing begins where humiliation once stood. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was a mentor, a builder, a symbol. And when Imani looked at him now, she didn't just see her father. She saw a man who turned a wrench into a weapon of justice.